Hey guys, so today this video is all about Charlie, my green iguana. So this is DIY Reptiles, hello, and today we're just going to be talking about Charlie the iguana. The other day I let her free roam around my room, which I do on occasion, and she kind of wreaked havoc in a way, as she always does, because she's a pretty big iguana at this point. I mean, not for a green iguana, but as far as lizards go and pet reptiles go, she's decent size. So about 3 years ago, right about 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in a couple days as of filming this, I got Charlie, and I named her Charlie because I wasn't sure if it was a male or female, but I got it in a very regrettable way. And I'm kind of alright with saying that it was very regrettable, bad decision on my part, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So what happened was I had been watching YouTube videos about iguanas, because who does that? It's pretty crazy. And I had been watching a lot of YouTube videos about reptiles, and I thought that I wanted a reptile. And this was before any of these animals. I had no animals at this point. I mean, we had 2 dogs and a cat, but no reptiles. I had had a turtle in the past, also a regrettable experience because I took it from the wild. But again, I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything about that at all. And we ended up letting it go again, which again isn't good. Nothing about that situation was good. And then I had a leopard gecko in the past as well, but I had no idea what I was doing, to be completely honest. I wasn't entirely sure. So we ended up rehoming it. I think it was a her, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but that was a long time ago. So reptiles were essentially new to me. I didn't really know a whole lot. I just didn't know a whole lot. So at this point, I did know enough to know I needed to do research. So I did a lot of research. I found out I essentially was able to make a pros and cons list about different types of reptiles, and it was between a bearded dragon and an iguana. But what I knew about iguanas and what I had seen about iguanas was that they can pretty easily be tamed, which isn't true, essentially, what I found out. But what I saw were so many people with iguanas, and they weren't necessarily green iguanas, because I am yet to find a good YouTuber that keeps green iguanas, really. I don't know, it's weird. But generally they were rock iguanas and things like that. And these were with more experienced owners who knew how to tame them, or they bought them tame, or something along the lines of that. Just not the same situation in which I would be in. But I wanted an impressive lizard that was tame, like puppy dog tame, and just a real big lizard. So that was kind of the pros of the iguana. And I knew how long they lived. I knew what they ate. And that was another pro. I had dealt with insects before, and I remember dealing with insects with the leopard gecko when I bought crickets, and I just didn't want to deal with that again. So I didn't know about DB roaches or anything at this point. I just knew that I hated crickets. They're so loud and annoying. I don't like them at all. And they smell. There's just tons of problems with crickets, so I don't use them. But it was between a bearded dragon and an iguana, and we almost bought a bearded dragon from a pet store at some point, and then I decided that I wanted a green iguana. And the options were either to go with one from an expo or one from a pet store. And there wasn't any any local pet stores, like ones that I had gone to, and we couldn't find any at the time. And this was in December. I wanted it for Christmas, but I knew what I was getting. Don't ever give somebody a pet without them knowing. If you want to gift a pet, you need to get them prepared. You can't surprise somebody with a pet. It doesn't work. So I knew what I wanted, and this was it. And we ended up buying it from a pet store that was kind of far away. Actually, I wasn't there. My brother bought it because we told him to, and we knew, we were in contact. And essentially, we should have waited for an expo. If we were going to go one of those two routes, an expo would have been good, because at an expo you can find one that's like, oh yeah, this is chill and tame. I can really work with this, and then you can get some handling experience and things like that. I'd never handled a green iguana. I'm not even sure that I was really comfortable holding the leopard gecko before that. And at this point, like, I'd been to a couple expos and I'd handled some animals, and I just wasn't I didn't really, I wasn't used to it at all. So my brother picks it up, and when the pet store employee goes to get it out of the cage, it drops its tail. And then all of a sudden, an iguana, he bought it, and now I'm getting an iguana that's freaked out, it's scared, it's angry, and I had never handled a lizard before. So that just wasn't a very good start to my reptile keeping experience. So we got home. I had a 55 gallon for it, which is a perfectly fine size for a small green iguana. A lot of people will say like it's not vertical enough. It's fine. It honestly is. And within a year we upgraded her into a much bigger tank anyway. But it was good and very adequate for her while she was small. And essentially I couldn't handle her at all. She was very scared of us, and I was too scared to let my father handle her or anybody. I didn't want to stress her out, because I knew like let her have a while. But the problem is I was afraid of her, which now I'm not, and now I wouldn't be. If I was put in the same situation again, I would be able to just get over it. I was legitimately afraid of her, but also scared for her mostly. And well, not afraid of her, more just scared for her to some extent. Like, I didn't have like a fear of lizards. I didn't get a lizard with a fear of lizards. That's not what happened here. It was just that I was very afraid that she would like run away, or I would hurt her, or she would get super stressed out, or something like along the lines of that. Not that I just was like afraid she would bite me or something like that, though I probably did have that fear a little bit, and a healthy fear of that is healthy. So that went on for a while. Actually, it's been going on. So the first year was real messy and real rough. Within the first year, I knew I wanted a bioactive enclosure. I wasn't very good at bioactive enclosures, but I set one up, I sanitized everything, and somehow she got mites. So like, I had her in a quarantine tank. She was completely fine. It was a 55 gallon paper towel at the bottom. She had started eating. She was doing well. She had no signs of anything. And then I moved her into a bioactive with everything sanitized, like everything, and she got mites. And I have no idea, to this day, I have no idea how. And that was the worst reptile experience absolutely ever. So essentially we couldn't clean an entire 55 gallon every single day. At that point I wasn't strong enough to lift a 55 gallon like that. So that just wasn't really an option. And we had to move her into a 20 gallon for the time being. And she was still small at this point. Like, she was not like baby, because I've seen little baby iguanas, or at least I've seen pictures of them. And she had to have been a couple months old maybe. Not real big, but not like the smallest iguana, So she was fine in that, but that was kind of our only option at that point. So there's really nothing else. Like, we couldn't clean everything every single day, which is what needed to happen to get rid of the mites. So I soaked her in povidone iodine bath solution, and I dealt with the stupid freaking mites. They were horrible, and I've had a very big fear of mites ever since. So eventually, somehow, we managed to get her off that. I finally set her up in a proper bioactive enclosure at that point, because I kind of knew what I was doing, more or less, and in the same 55 gallon. And then I think at the end of the year, I think that all happened within a year. My memory could be a little bit off, but I believe at the end of the year we built her an enclosure that was around, it was over 100 gallons like volume size, but it opened from the front. It was a pretty cool enclosure. I've sold it at this point, and it went to somebody who has a bearded dragon in it, and honestly it works perfect for that. So I'm really happy with how that enclosure turned out. It just doesn't fit in my room anymore with how I have things. But I set her up in that. I put my aloe vera plants in there and she ate them. That was kind of disappointing. But anyway, she doesn't have any plants with her now because she always destroys them. But at that point, I don't know, our relationship was just not good, because even throughout the whole mite process we had to like handle her and stuff, and it was just awful the entire time. And throughout that, at some point there, she dropped her tail again when my dad went to pick her up, and that really stressed me out like a lot. Like throughout this entire experience, it was very, very stressful for me and for her, of course. And she then had to regrow her tail again, and I don't think she had grown it back a whole lot, but she definitely dropped it like higher up on her tail or whatever. So I had basically accepted that I wouldn't handle her, especially in the 55 gallon, because the 55 gallon is horrible for that, because you're always coming from above. She was like impossible to get out of it because we had this hide in the corner, and what would happen is every day I'd come home from school and she would go to her hide in the corner, and then she would just be there. So I remember having to get her out. We just never got her out. Like she just stayed in the 55 gallon, and we had to get her out, and that was like a horribly just traumatic experience when we had to get her out to put her into the new enclosure, and it was just not good. So we had to chase her around the 55 gallon. So it wasn't a good enclosure at all to have a baby that's scared of you. You definitely want like a front opening enclosure of some type, or really. So with the mite situation, let's backtrack a little bit. What would have been best is if we kept her in a tub. I didn't know that you could keep reptiles in a tub like that. I hadn't thought of that to do that. But if I had to deal with something like that now, I would use a tub so then I could spray it out all the time, and that's what I would do today. But luckily, thank the Lord, I have not had to deal with mites for any reason, and I definitely quarantine all of the animals that I get in. And that's actually the reason why I have worked with turtles for so long, is because I knew turtles couldn't get mites. They can get other things, I've found out, which suck. So everything has its downsides, I guess, but essentially they can't get mites. So since then, we eventually moved her into the new enclosure, and if you want to see that, go check out that video. It's like 40 minutes. I should have made it a whole lot shorter. It's an awesome build though. It's a fantastic enclosure and I love it. It's massive. It's like volume size is like 500 gallons or something like that. It's like a closet essentially that's just sitting in my room, and that's how big it is for her. And she has done very well in there, and she's just a very small female. So that's why she's so small, and I don't expect her to grow a whole lot more because, well, I mean, I do. I hope that she does, and I will upgrade her again in the future if I need to, but I think that this enclosure is pretty adequate for her size. But ever since then, I have been able to have interactions with her. Once I moved her into that bigger enclosure that had a front opening door, I eventually got her to be able to like eat from my hand and stuff, and that's about as close as we've gotten. She's still not super tame at all. She doesn't like being picked up at all, but I can pet her sometimes, and I'll have to show that in a video in the future. But unfortunately, I don't think I've caught it on video. But I have a way of doing that, and then I can get off like skin and stuff, or shed and whatnot, and she really likes me doing that. So that's pretty cool, but sometimes she's not in the mood and she just decides to whip me. So moral of the story, green iguanas can be hard to tame, especially if they're your first lizard. So just don't expect all animals to be super tame, unfortunately. But I don't regret getting Charlie. I did for a while, but not anymore. I think it's great. And I mean, I still regret getting her from pet store. That was stupid. Don't do that. Do not do that. The best of any options is looking for a tame one on the internet somewhere, as far as Craigslist or somebody who just doesn't want it anymore. So something like that, because then you can get one that's nice and tame, and then you don't have to work for it so much. Or you could go to an expo or something like that and look for somebody who's like a responsible breeder and whatnot if you want to go that route. But I always recommend rescuing animals, and I haven't like bought an animal, especially from pet store. I have not bought an animal since I got Charlie. So that has been the story of the iguana that started the reptile room, the channel. Actually, the channel did start with her, so she's pretty important. But hope you guys enjoyed. Did a bit of a different format for this, so I hope it was enjoyable. And if you like this video, go ahead and like it down below. If you have any comments or concerns, put in the comments below. And if for more content, then subscribe. Have a fantastic day.